Create your comic in 8 easy steps. Hi everyone, Aziza here, and welcome to our crash course in comic creation. For this video, we will be covering the comic creation process from beginning to end. So we'll be covering the script writing process, the drawing process, and we'll also be noting some tips and tricks to avoid pitfalls and mistakes. There are tips and tricks throughout the entire video, so make sure you watch to the end. So let's get started. There are 8 steps to creating your comic: outlining, script writing, thumbnails, penciling, inking, colors, lettering, and the cover. At a high level, we can break this whole process into 2 segments: the writing segment and the drawing segment. The writing section includes outlining your story and writing the script. When it comes to the drawing, there's thumbnails, penciling, inking, lettering, colors, as well as the cover. For solo writers like me, aka comic writers that don't do their own art, the writing section, which is the outlining and script writing process, is where solo comic writers will spend the vast majority of their time. However, it's important as a solo writer to understand the entire process because you'll be working with an artist during the drawing phase, so that's why we'll be covering the entire process today. So during step 1, the outlining process, writers will create a blueprint for their entire story. They'll do this by writing out all the major plot points and the sequence in which they occur. The biggest benefit to outlining is that it keeps you organized. Being organized when you're writing allows you to keep characters and details and themes top of mind. In addition, it'll help you avoid writer's block and writing yourself into a hole. And it'll allow you to use more advanced writing techniques, such as foreshadowing, more impactfully. When outlining your story, make sure it has a beginning, middle, and end. From a series perspective, if your story is continual, you'll want to have an overarching story that also has a beginning, middle, and end. Then each issue will be used to progress that story. There are different levels to outlining. Some can be very detailed, while others can be very high level. I personally like to keep my outline very detailed. It assists me in writing my script further down the line. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see my outlining process. After you've written your outline, it's time to write the script, which is step 2. Here you'll figure out the length of your comic book, how many pages it will be, and how many panels each page will need. In terms of your panels, there should be 3 elements that are included: the panel description, the sound effects, as well as the dialogue. First is the panel description. What are the characters doing? Where are they? What's the time of day? What actions are they taking? What expressions are they giving? Things of that nature. Sound effects are something that the writer creates, but a letterer will input later down the line. Here you will figure out what it sounds like and what it will look like. Last but not least is dialogue. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's what the creatures or characters within your story are saying. Another thing to keep in mind is that each page should have a purpose. Think about what you want to accomplish with that page. Is it just getting characters from point A to point B? Or is it a big reveal and the monster's finally revealing itself? Knowing what you want to accomplish on that page will help you determine how many panels you'll need. Some tips and tricks for writing your script. First off is using your outline as your script, or at least the foundation. I personally will copy my outline and then start separating my outline into different pages. That helps me get a better understanding of the flow as well as what I want to accomplish on each page. Another cheat or tip that you can take in terms of figuring out how many panels you'll need on each page is that the average comic has 4 to 5 panels per page. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed and you're not sure where to start, you may just give each page 4 to 5 panels and then either add or subtract from there. I think the golden rule here is that you should have no more than 9 panels, but you can easily have just 1. Some other tips and tricks for writing your script is that each page should have no more than 200 words or 60 words per panel. This will allow you to keep your page from being overcrowded with text. Last but not least, remember that each item and each character within each panel will only get 1 movement. So you can't have a character doing multiple things in 1 panel. Once your script writing is done, other things you might consider doing during this step include getting your character art commissioned or drawing the character art yourself. At this point, you should have a good understanding of what your characters look like, what their quirks are, things of that nature. So getting that work done will help you further down the line. You may also use this time to write blurbs or any type of flavor text you'll be using later on to promote your comic. This will help you with the next step, which is having your work reviewed. You want your script in the best state possible before you enter into the drawing phase. If you're going to have your script in the best state possible, I always feel like it's important to get feedback. This can be done through beta reading and through editors. You should have your script beta read before you submit it to an editor. Having your script beta read will ensure that your story is coming across the way that you intended. Are they scared of the monster, or are they feeling pity for the monster? Do they like your characters, or are they actually not really vibing with the characters and feeling like they're a little flat? Beta reading will allow you to understand better how other people see your story. Once you're done with the beta reading, once you're done getting flavor text and synopsises and blurbs, now would also be a good time to submit your work to an editor. An editor will help you find not only grammatical mistakes, but if there are any big story, plot holes, or issues, an editor will help you figure out what to do and move forward. Once the script is finished, it's time to move on to the drawing phase. If you're a solo comic writer like myself, this will be when you go to find an artist, or if you draw your own art, this will be the part where you start drawing your story. Even if you're a solo comic writer like me, it's good to understand the process. It helps you be a better writer, it helps you do better panel descriptions, and just in general, since you'll be managing that whole process, it's good to understand how everything kind of comes together. So let's move on to step 3, which is thumbnails. Traditionally, when you research how to create a comic, most people will say penciling is the first step. However, I personally prefer a thumbnail before I do the pencils. Thumbnails are small rough sketches that map out the general composition. This will allow you to understand the layout in each panel as well as the overall page. And it'll also allow you to see if what you visualize in your panel descriptions really works in practice. However, the biggest benefit to thumbnails is preparing for lettering further down the line. By putting word balloons into your thumbnails, you'll A, ensure that you have enough space for your lettering at all, B, make sure that none of your lettering covers up important art, and C, make sure that the panel is arranged in a way that the conversations as well as the action flows naturally. After you're done doing your thumbnails, it's time to move on to step 4, which is penciling. Penciling is done by pencilers, and this is when an artist draws out the composition visually in pencil, hence the name. If you skip doing thumbnails, this will be the first time you get to see your entire composition in visual form. However, it's good to note that this will be a much more detailed version of your story than what you would see in thumbnails. Penciling is different from thumbnails because thumbnails are very high level and require very little detail. It's really highlighting the key elements within each panel. During the penciling step, artists are focused on shading, shadow, and making sure that the panel layout is what you agreed upon. From a solo writer's perspective, reviewing penciling, it's good to make sure that your story is coming across as intended. The penciling, as well as the thumbnail step, sets the foundation for your entire story. As a result, this step may take several rounds of feedback or changes. Moving on to step 5 is inking. During this step, an artist will actually draw over the pencil line, but they'll fine-tune the overall composition. Fine-tuning includes adding weight to certain lines, adding textures and shadows, providing contrast and shading, and overall just adding dimension to the overall piece. Another thing to point out is that during this phase, certain details that may have been omitted during the penciling section may be added, such as backgrounds. Our next step, step 6, is colors. At first glance, this segment seems very self-explanatory. It's adding colors to the page. However, I feel like this step is oversimplified and underrated. The coloring for a comic establishes a lot of important things that resonate with readers, such as the mood or the emotion. So coloring isn't just adding colors to a piece. Coloring should actually enhance your story. It should highlight key elements, add depth and dimension. It's actually establishing things that are truly going to resonate with the reader. Our second to last step is lettering. Lettering is when you add words to a page. However, this encompasses a lot of different things. It includes thought bubbles, word bubbles, narration boxes, sound effects. I would encourage solo writers specifically, and even artists in general, to do some research. There are a lot of different ways that a word balloon or a thought balloon can appear in terms of shape. So it behooves you to do some research to figure out if there's a certain shape that you'd like to include in your story. Also, a quick reminder that while lettering isn't art, it is the writer's job to come up with what the sound effect sounds like. So you will write out whatever the sound effect is, and then the artist will render that in visual form. Another reminder here is to make sure that whenever you're doing the dialogue specifically, that your typeface or your font is very easy to read. It can be very exciting to see all the different fonts and all the different options, but you want to make sure that your story is coming across clearly. And the best way to do that is to make sure that all your dialogue is legible. Last but not least is step 8, which is doing your cover. Do not underestimate the importance of your cover. Your cover is the first thing that a reader will see and will either entice them or discourage them from even picking up your book. Your cover is essentially an ad. and will help sell your book even when you're not there. As such, a lot of thought and care should go into its design. In terms of tips and tricks for covers, I have 3. The first is to not forget about your back cover. Your back cover is also another opportunity for you to sell your book. Consider writing a blurb that does a high-level summary of your story. That way, if you're at a convention, or if your story ends up in a bookstore somewhere, a reader can pick it up, turn it around, and get a good understanding of what they're about to read. The second tip number 2, is to not forget about your inside covers. You have an inside front cover and an inside back cover, and both of these pages can be used to promote your work. I personally use my inside back covers to include my website and my socials. That allows a reader, if they liked my story, to find me online and follow my work more easily. Last but not least, tip number 3 is researching your cover design. Specifically, your research should focus on what genre of comic you're writing. You should know what the composition is. Is it one character and mostly clean? Or do most comics within your genre have action scenes? Things of this nature will allow readers to know what type of genre of book they're looking at and will entice the right kind of reader. Knowing what colors are trending in your genre will help you again connect with the right readers, but it will also give you a chance to maybe stand out. For example, for The Kaiman's Cry, which is a horror action comic, most horror comics and horror books in general lean heavily on a red and black design. As a result, I consciously chose to go for a black and blue design with a hint of red. I've had several people at conventions tell me that the fact that my comic was clearly a horror comic due to the composition, but was blue and red, made them curious as to what the story was about, and that's what drew them to my table. So finding out the trends for comic book covers doesn't mean you necessarily need to chase them, but allows you to make more educated design choices to either break the rules or to stand out in a way that's going to draw the right readers. Some quick side notes when it comes to the drawing phase. While there were 6 different segments, each segment can have its own artist, or it can be combined and be done by one artist. In addition, depending on the artist that you're working with, certain steps may be combined. For instance, a lot of digital artists combine the penciling and inking phase. So there you have it, 8 steps to creating your comic. I know we covered a lot of information in a short amount of time, so make sure you check out my free guide in the description below. It has a lot of the tips and tricks that I included in this video, but it'll be available for you to download and keep with you while you work through your comic creation process. As a thank you for watching to the end, I have one more tip, a tip for the road, if you will, and that is for you to use text-to-speech to hear your comic. No matter how many times you review your comic, it's very easy to overlook missing words, missing plot points, misspelled character names, because you know what's supposed to be on the page. Using text-to-speech will allow you to actually hear your comic and catch a lot of mistakes. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment if there's any tips or tricks that you'd like to share, and also let me know if there's any other topics you'd like me to cover. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!